It's funny for some people and not for others. Just because I'm offended by something, it doesn't mean that I'm some poor helpless victim who's been beaten to a pulp by somebody's joke. So the idea that you have to be protected from any kind of uncomfortable emotion is one I absolutely do not subscribe to.
John Cleese just committed the ultimate crime, telling a joke. Now Twitter is melting faster than a cornetto in a heat wave, and the outrage mob is sharpening its pitchforks. The Monty Python legend decided to poke the bear at his latest stand-up show. Predictably, that bear responded by filing a formal complaint and demanding a safe space in the woods.
If you start saying, oh, we mustn't criticize or offend them, then humor's gone.
Now, Cleese is on a mission to rescue comedy from the grim. Buckle up, folks. This is going to be one hell of a ride through the absurd minefield of modern sensibilities. Picture this: John Cleese, comedy icon, walks into a club armed with decades of comedic genius. But instead of raucous laughter, he's met with a silence so thick you could spread it on toast. Crickets, blank stares, a collective sense of horror, as if he'd just suggested putting milk in before the tea.
How'd you make God laugh? Answer, tell him your plans.
Cleese, ever the optimist, tries to explain the joke. You know, just in case the audience has collectively suffered an irony deficiency, but explaining a joke is like dissecting a frog. Once you've done it, it's dead. And sure enough, it only makes things worse.
Well, I would have to consider each case. I mean, there's certain things I don't want to hurt people. But at the same time, it's a bit, the political correctness is a bit like a granny or a maiden aunt arriving at a party when everyone's having a good time. And she comes in, they all start sort of buttoning up and becoming self-conscious and behaving properly. And then when she leaves, you can have fun again.
A single voice rings out, "That's offensive." A moment later, the entire audience transforms into a Greek chorus of moral indignation. The room buzzes like a swarm of highly strung activists on a caffeine overdose. And then, the real horror begins. As Cleese fumbles for words, he sees them. Phones. Dozens of them. Twitter's about to combust faster than a microwave curry. Within minutes, hashtag insensitive Cleese is trending, and his mentions are flooded with angry face emojis, righteous fury, and demands that he be removed from society altogether.
If people can't control their own emotions, then they have to start trying to control other people's behavior.
This is the modern tragedy of context. Back in the good old days, if someone misheard you at the pub, the worst that could happen was an awkward misunderstanding, a swift apology, and another pint. But now, a single line taken out of context can be snipped, stripped of all nuance, and paraded around the internet like a criminal in the stocks.
It was very stuffy in the 50s. Yeah. It was fairly secure despite the Cold War. I don't think people were that living in a state of anxiety like they do now, but it was stuffy.
Social media doesn't just misunderstand jokes, it weaponizes them. What was once harmless banter now gets people blacklisted, banned, and branded as social pariahs. Before you know it, your joke about penguins has somehow been twisted into an international debate on climate change and colonialism. Cleese, of course, is no stranger to controversy, but this time, he's had enough. With the fire of 1,000 sunburned Brits on holiday.
Well, that's what a real Christian would do. See, what instead of immediately batting the criticism away, he would think, is that true? Is that true of me? How true is it? Not is it true, black or white, true or untrue, but to what extent is there truth in that? And people find that very, very difficult to do. They don't really want to be criticized. And what the mistake that the woke people say is that all humor is critical.
He launches a campaign to restore comedy to its former, glorious, politically incorrect self. But how does one take on an entire generation of professional outrage specialists?
When you're around super sensitive people, you cannot relax and be spontaneous because you've no idea what's going to upset them next.
Cleese isn't entirely sure yet. Perhaps he'll start a YouTube channel called Unwoke and Unafraid. Maybe he'll write a book titled How to Offend Everyone and Still Sleep Soundly at Night. Whatever he does, one thing is certain, he's not backing down.
There'll be a lot of people in the audience who I think would misunderstand the nature of my humor and would go after me as a result.
Determined to prove his point, Cleese embarks on a social experiment disguised as a comedy tour.
What that means, because it is almost meaningless. and yet it's extraordinarily funny.
He tests his material on audiences and finds that, unsurprisingly, those who approach comedy in good faith laugh, while those searching for outrage find it.
You get the normal laugh, and then you get the extra energy that comes from that little bit of anxiety being liberated. So you get huge laughs when you deal with taboo subjects.
It's like watching a trapeze artist perform without a safety net. Thrilling, dangerous, and guaranteed to make at least one person faint. But the real question is, can he prove to the world that comedy needs its freedom?
The whole point about comedy, and believe you me, I've thought about this, is that all comedy is critical. Even if you make a very inclusive.
Cleese decides to take his experiment to the stage, inviting both old school comedy lovers and the terminally woke. It's a social experiment wrapped in a farce, and the results are more unpredictable than the British weather. As Cleese steps onto the stage, he launches into a classic monologue, blending razor-sharp wit with a mischievous twinkle. Some laugh, some seethe, some look like they've swallowed a lemon whole.
I think there should be a television show where people compete against each other to see who has been victimized the most.
Well.
And then the inevitable happens. He delivers a joke so sharp it could cut glass. Silence. And then click. The phones come out. Faster than you can say cancel culture. Twitter erupts. Hashtag cancel Cleese trends alongside hashtag Cleese for Prime Minister. The digital battlefield is set.
The woke people don't understand the difference between the two because it requires understanding of differing contexts.
But Cleese, ever the wily veteran, refuses to cower. Instead, he throws down the gauntlet. If you're offended, let's discuss it. Right here, right now. Let's see if you actually understand what I said.
A good idea, which is let's not be mean, particularly to people who are not able to look after themselves very well.
And then, the unthinkable happens. Some of the woke warriors actually lower their phones. They engage, they question, they debate. Could it be? Could there still be room for comedy in a world of digital outrage? Or is this just a brief lull before the next cancellation storm? Only time will tell. But one thing is clear, John Cleese isn't finished yet.
They've killed comedy. The BBC has completely screwed up comedy because it's become a bureaucracy. Right. And they think like bureaucrats.